And welcome back to the Imperfect Podcast. This has been an episode that I have been anticipating for, at least a couple of months. I reached out to Chelsea back in I don't even know, September when I first decided to start doing this, because I knew that I wanted to get this episode because this is just such an important topic for me because it has such a huge impact on my life. But I feel like the people around me, yes, they know that I have a birthmark, but at the same time, they don't really know what it is. So if you guys would like to join me in welcoming Chelsea, how are you?
I am good on this wonderful Saturday. How are you?
I'm good. So I want to start by just letting you introduce yourself a little bit.
Ooh, okay. So my name is Chelsea. I'm 28, getting very old. So weird. I live in Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is about 20 miles south of Charlotte. And like Gabby, I've grown up and have a port wine stain and was also born with 2 hemangiomas. So I've spent most of my life, I feel like, in the dark in the birthmark world until the last 3 years. So, and then my world just kind of opened up and got bigger.
So I wanted to start by asking, what is a birthmark? Because I feel like a lot of people, come up to me and they're like, oh, did you get burned? All this stuff. And then I tell them it's a birthmark and they're like, oh, okay. And they don't really know what I mean by that. So what is a birthmark, Chelsea?
Such a loaded question, I feel like. So for us, I think we would see it as an unusual mark or blemish that was present on the skin at birth or a little bit after. As I've gotten older, I find that many different things can be categorized as being birthmarks. It doesn't just have to be skin related, but for us, that's how we see it. So I'd say that's probably the medical definition or just everyday birthmark definition.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say this right, but you mentioned that you had 2 of these. So what did you have?
So I don't know exactly how many different types of birthmarks there are because, like I said, I feel like I've lived life just not even being curious about it until the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
But the hemangiomas are also a different type of vascular birthmark. So mine, luckily, went through a process of involution. And what that is just basically your body absorbing it over time. So at a specific age, mine involuted, I believe it was about 4. And while some hemangiomas need treatment and different types of topical medicines to help them go through this process, back in the 90s, my mom was completely in the dark. We didn't really know what to do. So I had the port wine stain and I had the 2 hemangiomas. And the doctor was saying, well, we want to pay more attention to these 2 hemangiomas. And what they are is they're just benign blood-filled tumors, and not to be confused with cancer. They're benign, so they're not cancerous, and they happen more so in females and apparently occur up to 12% of all infants by year 1. So 14 in 100 people are born with vascular birthmarks, and this is just one of the types of vascular birthmarks. So thankfully, that's not something that traveled with me throughout the years. It just kind of took care of itself. So yeah, that's the other type of crazy random vascular birthmark that I had as a kid.
That's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I have a birthmark. It's a vascular birthmark. It's a port wine stain. It's just, the blood cells are showing through my skin. And I didn't know that there were other types of vascular birthmarks. I really thought that a vascular birthmark was just a port wine stain. And so Chelsea and I actually I think we met through Reagan, didn't we? Through Hello Port Wine Stain?
I was thinking about that
first.
today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was thinking about that and I was like, how did I find Gabby? And I feel like I'm always searching for that because after opening myself up to the world of birthmarks on social media, I'm like, how did I find all of these wonderful people?
Mm-hmm.
But exactly, I think it was through the Born This Way video. You were in that video that she put together. And I was like, who is that? So I just searched through and try to find who all was involved with that same video.
Yeah, so I have a friend who has a lucky fin, And I noticed on Instagram he was following the Lucky Finn Project. And I was like, okay, this is so cool. I was like, he's meeting people that are like him through Instagram. And I didn't know anyone at all. Like, it was just me. I was just my own little port wine stain in the world, and no one else was like me. And I was like, okay, so if this kid's finding people who are like him, then maybe if I look up Port Weinstein, then I'll find someone. So then I found Reagan with Hello Port Weinstein, and she, guys, you need to check her out. She comes out with the cutest merch for Port Weinsteins and birthmarks, and I'm obsessed. But I started following her, reached out to her, sent her a picture of me to put on her page. And then I was in, like what Chelsea said, the Born This Way video, which was a TikTok we made, and it was the cutest thing ever. And I love it. But I finally got to see people who were like me, between like people from infants to I don't even know how old, but it was just the coolest thing ever. And that's kind of how Chelsea and I met, but also it was just such an eye-opening experience to see so many people like me, because like I said, I grew up thinking I was the only one.
I did too, and that's kind of one of the things that is a huge part of my story, is just feeling so alone in our journeys with birthmarks, and how much as a kid, if only like I would have known someone that looked like me, or even adult that looked like me, that could coach me through like what exactly this meant, right? And when I see you guys and finding so many teenagers in this community, I'm literally blown away, because most of you are not covering yours. And I spent 18 years of my life waking up every morning and putting foundation over it, and spending the day making sure that it still looked good, so there wasn't anything showing through. And it wasn't until I was 26, which is almost 3 years ago, where I dove into this crazy rabbit hole of the hashtag Port Wine Stain on Instagram. And it's like Reagan was one of the first people, Eric Pixley, but Paige Lauren Billiot with Flawless Effect. If you guys haven't seen her, like, she was literally the first person that I found. And it completely blew my mind, because she's modeling and she's accentuating her birthmark, and she's wearing it with so much pride and like celebrating her difference. And I was like, this is beautiful. Like, this could be me. And to see you, and we've had that conversation in the past, like whenever you went to the makeup store and someone put makeup over your birthmark, and you were like, no, this is not me. And I wish so much that I could have had that confidence and self-acceptance at a younger age. But it took me 18 years to get to this point. But I'm always so jealous and envious of those stories of people who are like, I've always loved my birthmark. What do you mean? And I'm just like, oh. And when I have moms reach out to me and ask about my experience, I'm like, it's not one size fits all. This, I can tell you my experience, but there's many other different stories out there that you want to listen to, not just mine, who isn't the best in the beginning, but got to this point where I am now. So,
Right.
And we spend so much time feeling like we're alone, but port wine stains happen in 3 out of 1,000 births. And when you hear that number, it sounds like a lot. So like, to not run into anyone in your everyday life, or like at some point in your life, is just kind of wild, right? We still feel so alone until social media and the internet, right?
Yeah. So I think something that like I think is really, really cool is that every port wine stand is different. And that is just the coolest thing in the entire world, because we're little human snowflakes. Like,
I
everyone's
love
port wine
it.
stand is different. And I
Our little
think
splash
even
of color.
right. And I think even you had reached out to me, or someone did, and they were like, hey, my birthmark's on the same side of my face, and it's kind of the same shape, like mine goes over my eye. And then you were like, yeah, mine's above my lip on the left side. And I was like, that's so cool. Like, they're similar, but they're also still very different, which I think is the coolest thing.
I love finding birthmark twins.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when I say I went down a rabbit hole, like, most of my feed is birthmark people now. And I love that. Like, that changed my whole life, seeing my feed look like me. But I found like about 6 people, maybe 7, who have it in the exact same spot. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, and I'll reach out to them every now and then. I'm just like, I love finding people
Yeah.
were in the exact same spot. 'Cause it's so rare. Like all of them are very different. I mean, and they can be on extremities and other parts of the body, and that makes, finding people in the birthmark world on social media a little bit more difficult. But how fun, I
Right.
think now. I didn't really
Yeah.
think that as a kid, but
Yeah. I mean, I know for me growing up, it was always like it wasn't necessarily something that I thought about, but as all of us in the community do, we always get these assumptions and people always say things. So it became as I got older something that I think about more and something that I definitely became self-conscious of. Um, but then, like you said, in eighth grade, when my mom was like, okay, you're gonna be, the queen of the school, you're gonna be the oldest, so we're gonna get you some makeup so you can like, feel grown up and everything. Um, and I was in that store and the girl, she was like, don't even worry, I got you. Like I'm a birthmark specialist. And I was like, well, if you're a birthmark specialist, why are you in a makeup store? But it's okay. I didn't ask any questions and I was like, okay, this is great. And she just kept piling on the foundation. And I think she assumed that I wanted to cover it. And I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. But then when I saw myself in the mirror, it wasn't me. Like it really wasn't me. So I ran out of the store and I was crying and I ruined my shirt because I was wiping off all the makeup. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, what happened? And it was in that moment that I realized that like these are my true colors. And I feel like having a birthmark and that having that moment puts a whole new meaning to true colors. um and yeah, I do still wear makeup, but I try really hard not to, because it's a part of me. And no matter where I go in life, no matter what I do, like that's always going to be my history. It's always going to be my story, and so it's always going to be there.
but that's such a powerful story that so many little kids need to hear because, like, when I started wearing makeup, I was 8, like fourth grade. What? And it started because of bullying, obviously, but I think I became more accustomed to seeing me without it, because I mean, every morning I'm waking up, I'm covering it up. Before I go to bed, my makeup comes off. And that's who I became, right? But you were in 8th grade. You were so used to seeing it every day and having it there, and like to cover it up just felt wrong. And I love that. Like it's tough because it's like I said in the IG live with the VBF, like how hard it must be as a parent for your 8-year-old daughter to ask you to wear makeup, to ask if you can go to the store and buy her makeup so she can cover a birthmark. Like how do you decide what's best? And I think in that moment, my mom knew, there must be something wrong for her to want to cover it. And I don't recall ever really talking to my parents much about the little bit of bullying that I experienced. But it's just so hard sometimes. And I'm still kind of going through my self acceptance now, but how hard it can be having the birthmark on some days, but also raising a child with a birthmark can also be very hard because you want to raise your kid to love and embrace their differences, but and my parents fed that into me. You're beautiful, you're unique, and I heard that so often. But I feel like what I heard most was the bullying that I had every day. So it
Yeah.
was just like a quick escape type type, type route that I took.
Right. So, speaking of bullying and, the assumptions and everything, how did you handle that? I know you said you kind of resorted to makeup, but was there more to that story?
I feel like I was really lucky when I went into elementary school. I grew up in a really small town in South Carolina. So we had preschool, and I kind of found my good little friends that I went into kindergarten with, and they always had my back, and they knew I had a birthmark, I guess, as much as you can know at the age of 5. But like,
Mhm.
it's you don't notice those things when you're that young. So but if you're not accustomed to seeing people with differences, which in a small town, I just feel like there's just not much of that. Um, Sometimes you are like the topic of conversation, or you feel like an outcast almost immediately because people are asking. And I don't remember, so much kindergarten, but getting into the first grade, the second grade, the third grade, that's when I had 2 bullies that really every time they saw me, they made it a point to make my life miserable. And my nickname was Kool-Aid Stain. And that's just, they would yell it in front of everybody. So everyone got to know that name. And it just was completely miserable for those few years. Um, and mind you, I graduated with the same people that I went to elementary school with. So that name followed me even when I covered it. But I feel like when I covered it in the fourth grade, I went to a different middle school, and it combined a couple different elementary schools. So people from this other elementary school never knew I had a birthmark. So I kind of actually became more friends with people who didn't realize that I had it, but it was never something that I wanted to hide from people. So, as I developed new friends, had sleepovers, like I wasn't trying to like keep my makeup on always. I was telling them like, just, by the way, it's just a birthmark. And then when I started dating in high school, I felt like that was something I couldn't hide either. I didn't want to like make it seem like I don't have this and then shock them that I do.
Right.
So I would always tell them like, just so you know, and I've done that even, I'm married now, but even my past relationships, it's never been something that I would want to hide, even
Right.
before I started uncovering it. But yeah, the bullying is tough. I think even if you don't have a difference, facial difference, any sort of difference, kids are going to find something to make fun of you about. I feel like, and some people are lucky that have never been bullied at all. And in some of these birthmark socials, that's the questions I've been asking is, raise your hand if you have experienced bullying because of your birthmark. And normally about 80% of people raise their hand. But I think too, even if we didn't have it, we probably would have experienced some type of bullying at some point in our life. Maybe not to the extent that we did because of these differences, but I just hope that we're coming into a world of more acceptance. It's like you said earlier, we're seeing people on TV that look different than they did 10 years ago. We're seeing people with differences featured in magazines. And I'm just hoping that we're trying to tell the world that different is beautiful, that we all have our own uniqueness in some way. But what a wonderful thing to be seeing it in other places throughout the world, right?
Yeah. I think that's so cool too. Like, just the fact that, I mean, when you grow up being the only one with the difference, um, or with any specific trait that sets you apart from anyone else, um, it's so cool to be able to look on your phone, which is where the most of the world is right now, but to look on your phone and just see people in Spain who, look like you, people across the world that, and you have this community with people and you feel a connection to them, even though, you might not even know how to say their name, or you might not even know what they look like, but like what, that they have this, and that it's something that you have in common, and it's a great connection that you can have with people.
Growing up, like, I say social media has its pros and its cons, the internet has its pros and its cons, but growing up in the 90s, and then the first thing that we had was MySpace, right? And that was in middle school, and we didn't have smartphones. I didn't have my first smartphone, and this really dates me, Gabby. I feel like now I'm really getting into the fact that 28 really seems old these days, but like I didn't have my first smartphone until college. I didn't have my first flip phone until I started driving at 16. So even though like we had things like AIM, like AOL Messenger and Yahoo Messenger, and got into the MySpace and the Facebook, like I never even thought to like Google about my type of birthmark and like find people. So that's the huge positive now as technology has progressed, is like hopefully these kids and the youth in our community, and even the teens who've never even like got involved with the community or didn't know it was there, I love finding them because I'm like, do you know like how big this community is? It's like a big little family of like birthmark communities, and I love that. Because I feel like you can spend so much time just not even like giving it a thought, or knowing that there's more of us out there. But that connection, as soon as I started exploring it, was just like instant. And I felt like I knew these people my whole life because they understood such a huge part of me that no one else understood. Like I felt validated and I
Mhm.
felt like seen for the first time. And that was like, I explained it's like earth shattering when
Mhm.
you spend so much time trying to like dig something so far down that it's just not surfacing and being an everyday concern. But this community is amazing. Like I'm
Mhm.
blown away by it every single day.
Yeah. And like you said, it's like an overwhelming feeling of just being understood. Like, and I'm 16 and I know that's not a lot, but having grown up for, I don't know, 14, 15 years, being the only one, and then having an overwhelmingly large community, that's really just like a family because we've all had like similar hardships and we've all like experienced similar things, and so we feel for each other, and just like an overwhelming sense of love and acceptance is just it's an amazing thing. So anyone who's listening who has any sort of difference, like look up what you have in the search on Instagram and find your community, because I can guarantee they're out there.
Went down.
Oh, you're
I
totally
was like,
fine.
oh no. But no, seriously, the bond is so deep. And yeah, I urge you guys to find your people because that's how I explain it. Is like I feel like I found my people finally.
Mhm. And I mean, when you got your promotion within the foundation, the number of people that were like congratulating you on their Instagram stories, I'm like, how do you guys even know Chelsea?
I know, and I'm still like so just mind blown and blown away by that because so when I discovered the BBF was when I started going down those rabbit holes on Instagram, and which led me to, hey, I should probably like Google a little bit and learn a little bit about my birthmark because I really don't know much. And their website is birthmark.org. So I'm like, well, they must have tons of information that I need to know about. And when I discovered their website, I was like, what? Like they've been around since 94? Like if only my mom would have had this resource at her fingertips. And there's so much education and access to doctors in your area and asking them questions about your birthmarks. Like it completely blew my mind. And they go through the definitions and to treat or not to treat. And that's how I figured out that our birthmarks are progressive lesions and they change over time. And I'd never really had many treatments. And as a teenager, I had two or three, but it was because I wanted it to be lighter so I could cover it better.
Mhm.
And then at 26, I went down these rabbit holes. And then at 28 this year, I've had three laser treatments because I can tell, it is getting darker in color. It is changing in texture. I can see my lip on that side getting a little bit bigger. And after learning so much about it, I'm like, man, like it's crazy. And so going down those rabbit holes in 2018 led me to that website, which led me to find the global ambassadors. And I was like, there's like hundreds of people across the world because it's an international foundation that
Mhm.
are signing up to spread awareness. And look at these pictures. Like, oh my gosh, it just blew my mind. So I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but whatever it
Right.
is, I want to be a part of it. And just started openly sharing my story and like trying to be vulnerable about it because um, I decided at the beginning of 2018 that what I want to do is just be my truest self. This is my biggest insecurity that has held me back in so many ways, I feel like. So, how can I'm getting older. I do want to have kids eventually. And while our type of birthmark isn't hereditary, I was thinking, well, what if I have a kid with a difference? How am I going to raise them and teach them to accept themselves and be confident about their difference if I can't do that for myself?
Mhm.
And I started getting to the age where I was like thinking about my mom when I was a kid and like all the things that she went through and the questions that these parents get. And I was like, I've got to face this. Like my biggest insecurity. It's going to be challenging, but I got to do it. So I started sharing my story and then got a little bit more involved with being an ambassador. Met some of the ambassadors, I remember messaging Scott Couples, the director of the Global Ambassadors, back in like December of 2019. And I just kind of started like talking to him and seeing what more I can do. And I was like amazed at how much he's done with this ambassador program. It just blows my
That's
mind because
amazing.
he's like superhuman. It's crazy because
Yeah.
he's a dad. He's an accountant. He does so much. He's in the Air Force. He does the Global Ambassador Program. I'm like, when do you relax?
Yeah.
And then, over time, he kind of let me help where I was needed. And then our council formed this year, and we've been putting together some committees to kind of do a little bit more within the community. And then Birthmark Social blossomed in April, and we've been hosting those once a month on Zoom. And then suddenly I was getting more involved with the foundation, and then they were like, we kind of want to bring you on into the board of directors. And I was like, what? Like, my heart sunk. I was like, what is life? I was like, I would literally be ecstatic to do anything I can for this foundation that has literally changed lives and has given so much knowledge to so many people that need it.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I had a mom reach out to me, I think it was like a day or two ago, and she was like, "Hey, my son's 18 months old. I want to know, like, I don't want to make anything harder for him growing up. Like, do you have any advice on like treatments or whatever?" And I was like, "I don't, but I know where you can go to find advice." Because I was like, when I was 5, my parents gave me the decision to keep going with treatments, with the laser treatments, or to stop. And I wanted to stop because I was terrified. That thing was so scary. And I actually have like a scar on my upper lip because when I was getting it done, I moved when I wasn't supposed to. And so I have a scar there now.
It must have
But
like overlapped, or they had it set too high.
yeah, but it was just a terrifying thing. They always gave me a lollipop though. So that was always fun. But
And
I
that's
was like,
always different too, whenever like people have gone through so many treatments as a kid. Like, I hear people that have missed school or have to go to school
mhm,
with their dots, and not only is it hard having the difference, but now you've got to go to school or be out and about with these dots on, and even more questions. So
right. And I feel
I'm
like
always fascinated.
the dots are almost scarier than the birthmark itself because then, it looks a lot darker and it's actual like spots instead of like a blob.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
it sparks more of a question because it's like, why do you have like an array on your face? You know?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I
Um,
completely hid in high school whenever I had mine because it was over the summer, and I was like, well, I ain't going anywhere. Or
mhm,
I'm gonna try to cover it up with makeup. And now this year, I mean, it's been the year of wearing masks, so mine kind of is perfectly where if I wear my mask, like, I can cover it. But my first treatment was kind of before the mask ordinances happened, so I was like, I got really worked up. I was like, well, it's been 2 years since I've been cover up free. Why am I making such a big deal about going to work and out and about with the purpura, the purple polka dots? But it took me a while to even like become confident about that and like be ready to answer the questions that people ask about it. Like,
mhm.
we think about those things.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. How would you prefer someone to approach you to ask a question about it?
That one's tough too. Because I feel like it's always in the back of our mind
Mhm.
whenever we meet someone new. I just had a job interview earlier in the year, and we were wearing the masks, and then we ended up being really socially distanced, and everyone took their mask off because we were very far apart. And I was like, I took mine off, and I was like, this is my first interview with my makeup not covering my birthmark. And I could tell his eyes went straight to my birthmark, but I didn't address the elephant in the room.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that we all think about is when we meet someone new, do we have to address the elephant in the room, or do we wait for them to ask the questions? And what I do is I'm going to act like I'm normal because I am. And then when you ask the question, I will give you all the details. So I think the best way to ask is whatever you feel like is the nicest way, right? We don't
Mhm.
like people to say, what happened to your face?
Mhm.
Or I've had a situation where I was working and someone um, came up to me and they were like, can we talk? And I was like, yeah, of course. And he pulled me aside, and there was so much goodness and like care that went behind this, but he was like, I just want to make sure that you're okay because I know a lot of people who've been through that. And I think since then, he was assuming that I had been abused, and I kind of told him, I was like, oh, no, like, it's a birthmark, but thank you for asking, because I think too, um, in those situations where someone may have been abused, we do need to ask if they're okay. We do need to make sure that if we think that someone is in a bad situation, that if you feel close enough, or um, if you feel comfortable enough asking that person if they're okay. So I try not to get offended when it comes to things like that. Um, but I think, kids are always curious. They ask in their own way. And I've tried to kind of not get bent out of shape about how people ask. I was at work one point, and that is what someone said is, what happened to your face? And it was not a good day for me that day. And I just said,
Mm-hmm.
it's a birthmark, and moved along. But um, I don't know what the most common thing is. I thought when I uncovered it that I would get a whole lot more questions about it. And I have here and there, but none of them have been that abrupt. But I do live in the South, so people tend to be like straight to the point and sometimes ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you just need to be as nice as possible and say, "Do you mind if I ask?" Um, and what do you say? Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to say anything's wrong with your face, but what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. And
Yeah.
that seems like the nicest ways. Do you mind telling me what happened? And maybe that's if there's no good way, honestly.
Yeah.
But I
That's like,
enjoy the curiosity, and I enjoy people asking about it now. Whereas if I were your age and I was still covering it and someone noticed it and asked me, it would make me literally hyperventilate. And I would be like,
right.
it's birthmark, gotta go by. But like
Yeah.
now I'm like, ask me all the questions. I'm an open
Hmm.
book.
And I feel like that's a question that I kind of get a lot, is because like I'll have people come up to me, and I know when I was a lot younger, my mom would, take me grocery shopping with her, and she'd have people come up to her and kind of accuse her of being a bad mom because they thought I was like very badly sunburnt, or they would be like, "Oh my gosh, like are you okay? Is everything fine?" Like, and they would accuse her of, abusing, and just like stuff that was just very not right. But they don't know any better. And I feel like with kids too, is when I was growing up, I mean, I still am, but you know, when I wasn't as comfortable with my birthmark, I would notice that like when I'd go to the playground after school, or like when I'd walk in the halls in elementary school, and like the younger grades would see me, I'd always get these really awful looks, like because they didn't know what it was, so it would be a mix of like confusion and fear almost, and so I would get almost offended by their the look that they gave me, but I told myself, they don't know you, they don't know that you're a nice person, they don't know what happened, and so if they don't want to ask, that's their business. um but I can't get upset because they don't know my life, so I feel like, there's no good way to ask, but I feel like if you make it clear that you have, kind intentions, then that almost softens the blow. um
Absolutely.
yeah, but I
It's
feel
like,
like,
I feel like too, having our birthmarks have instilled such empathy in us for others at
mhm,
such a young age. And it's allowed us to pick up on people's body language, probably, and be more a little self-aware than most people, because we do notice the stares, we do notice the double takes, we do notice when you whisper over to someone else and you're looking at us, you're
mhm,
probably curious about it. And I don't find myself going out of my way in those situations. um, but it can be uncomfortable seeing those stares and glances that seem like, ew, like, is
right,
that contagious? Is that a burn? Is it a sunburn? Like, what is that? And we've all
yeah,
gotten that. And we all have those stories of running into people and how they've asked or how they've responded. But now, as I get older, I think the most important thing is when they do ask, trying to educate them, because
mhm,
we're probably not going to be the only person they see with this type of difference, right?
right,
And just letting them know, like, this is what it is. And
mhm,
when you're explaining it to kids, usually they think it's really cool and fun,
right,
and like, and then adults, for some reason it seems like the adults are the ones that are giving us more of a hard time, which is interesting. Like I have no problem with a little kid staring at me. I'm probably gonna like wave at them and like try to be like inconspicuously nice or something.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing is like we notice those little things throughout our life, and we can choose to let those things control us, um, or let it really get to us to the point of being insecure all over again about, you know, our little difference. But we also have the ability to educate and spread awareness, and I think that's the coolest part now, and where I've come with mine is ask me, I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you.
Yeah. And I feel like what you made the Mark's Teens group chat on Instagram, and you sent out all the information to become an ambassador. And when I think ambassador, I think of, like all of those Instagram accounts trying to get you to like, we'll give you this product for like 50% off if you want to be an ambassador. So, I was skeptical. And then I was also like, but I'm 16. Like, why would you want a 16-year-old as an ambassador? But I checked it out, set up my profile, and I'm so excited that it's almost like, because I've tried really hard to like be positive about it and share it with other people, because I know that I'm not going to be the last person they see, but I'm probably going to be the first. So I know that, one, because I don't want to give the birthmark community that bad reputation of like, oh, we're all like on edge about what people say, because I feel like that's not true, because the majority of us, we've grown to love it. So I try to keep like an open mind and I try to stay positive about it. But I feel like, when someone comes up to me and they ask about it, I try to be as honest as possible too. But I feel like now that I'm an ambassador, it's like I'm almost recognized for it, and I can like share more than just my personal story. I can be like, if you think this is cool, check out what else we got going, because I feel like it shouldn't be seen as like a negative thing, because I love that I'm different. I love that I'm my own little human snowflake. So I feel
Right?
like,
And we're more memorable. Like
right.
you will remember me. Like I get people that are like, you look like someone I know. And I laugh at that because I'm like, do I really know? Because I feel like the first thing you see is definitely something you don't see all the time. So it's interesting that people say that. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it's like my personality that seems familiar to them. But yeah, like being able to be a resource in the community is so powerful. And the word ambassador, it's funny you say that you're just like, that was your first thing is like, what are you trying to tell me? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I never really thought about that, but it's more of like being a representative and um, giving that information to people that need it and sharing your story and wanting to educate others and just raise awareness. And
Mm-hmm.
when I first heard ambassador, I thought the same thing. I was like, this sounds like a lot of work. What am I
Mm-hmm.
getting myself into exactly? And then after talking with Scott, he's like, it's however much or however little you want it to be. If you want to show up on May 15th on Vascular Birthmark Awareness Day, and that's your part as a global ambassador, and you're showing your story, then that's cool. But if you want to do more and if you want to be more involved, it's that too if you like.
Mm-hmm. I think something that, as a human we think, but also someone who has a difference, we often think why. And I really think that, because, no one else in my family has it, none of my friends have it, just found the community this year. So I feel like, why me? Why now, But I feel like I was given this like for a reason. It's a positive thing that I have this, and I feel like it almost ties into our personality. And this could be just a stereotype, but I've noticed that everyone in this community is, like you said, super empathetic, super sweet, super accepting, super loving, and I feel like that's kind of a trait that all of us have because of what we've been through. But I also feel like, in a sense, like we had to grow up faster, to the point where like we have this sense of maturity and this sense of like, I guess it could be like confidence or acceptance, but we have this, trait to us that I feel like a lot of other people our age don't really have.
And it's funny you say that because I've always told people that even at a young age, I feel like an old soul. Like I always felt older than my friends. Like I was usually like the very nurturing mother type
Right.
friend growing up. And I think it is, there's a lot to be said about how this difference has affected us and who we are. And it's just like you said, I say it all the time. I now see this as a gift that was given to us on purpose. I feel like it was given to us because we were chosen to be the ones that were strong enough to overcome it, and that we were eventually, however long your journey of self-acceptance takes, and I'm still in the process of mine. It's taken
Right.
so long even now, but like you were meant to be that person in this community, or be that person that sheds light on something that um, people are curious about, or spread the information. Like there's just so much, and I I just think it's this community. I mean, it's just like I never thought that I would be a part of something where I just felt so included and
Mhm.
like I said, seen. And you don't really know that you need that until you find it, and then it's just like, how have I lived all this time without it? So if
Right.
we can be these ambassadors and represent this community for that little kid, like who I was at 8 years old, who's struggling, who feels alone, like, and all they have to do is search us on birthmark.org, or find the VBF, or even find the online community on social media. Like that would have changed my life at 8 years old. That would have changed my life as a kid. And these moms within this community are such a huge ray of sunshine because they're getting involved for their kids. So when their kid grows up, they're like, here you go, like here's your people.
Mhm.
Here's all the people that look like you and are going through the same things as you. And if they want a role model, or any community support, like we're here. Like what a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I know that's like one of my goals. Um, is I don't need to be famous. I don't need to be a household name, but music is a passion of mine, and I am releasing my own stuff, and I want to be that person for someone to look up and be like, okay, like she's doing all this, and she has, to someone else it could be seen as like a burden or like a hard thing. For me, it's not, but for someone on the outside, it looks like growing up with this could be a challenge. And, it has been, but I've gotten to the point where I've accepted it. But I feel like someone who's looking at it from the outside could be like, she's accomplished all of this and she's had that to deal with. So it's like, if
She
I
didn't
can,
let it get in the way of her
right,
success. And
right. So if
as a kid who has a birthmark, to see you making music and you look like them, like what? We need more
mhm.
of that.
Yeah, and even someone who's, not necessarily a part of the community, but someone who's struggling with, accepting themselves for another reason, if they can see me and they can see that, I haven't let my difference stop me from achieving my dreams, then why should they stop themselves? So I feel like I'm a huge advocate for you are the only one in your way and you're perfect the way you are. You know what I mean?
You were created to be you, and that's so much easier said than done. But I feel like getting to the point where you accept, find peace with, love, and own your difference, it completely changes your life. I feel like
Mhm.
because you've allowed others not to have that effect on you anymore, because you love yourself as exactly who you are.
Mhm. And I feel like that goes as for like bullying for any type of reason. I feel like they always say, kill them with kindness. And if they see that they can't get to me, then, they're probably going to stop bullying in general, even. Because if they can't get to me, and if other people see that they can't get to me, and they see that, how that impacts the bully, then other people aren't going to let the bully get to them. So then the bully loses his power, and we all live in a happy little world together.
And if I would have known those things like as a kid, like it would have changed my whole life, right? I mean, I allowed the bully to win in my situation, and they won for years and years and years. But the whole thing is just like not giving them that power, because at the end of the day, it's just reflecting more on their character than who you are as a person. Like it's really showing more of their insecurities because they're lashing out about anything they can on you to make them feel better in a way.
Right. And I often think, like, what would I be like if I didn't have this? I wouldn't have my confidence, which I feel like is a huge part of who I am. And my confidence is a part of everything that I do. So I probably wouldn't have music as much as I do, because I wouldn't have auditions for solos. I wouldn't have released my own music. I wouldn't have believed in myself when it came to anything. And I feel like I also wouldn't have, you know, I wouldn't have the confidence to help other people and kind of give them advice. I feel like I give myself advice and I give other people advice, but that all stems from the same, confidence that I have with my birthmark. So I feel like if I wasn't made this way, then I would be a completely different human being.
I often think the same thing. And it's like, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, like if there was a way for me to remove my birthmark, would I do it? And at the time when I was covering it, it obviously would have been yes.
Yeah,
But
me too.
now that I've gotten to this point, I'm like, heck no. Like I would never remove it if I could.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's part of me. It's made
Right.
us who we are as people.
Before 8th grade, I was like the same way. It wasn't really, a huge deal, because luckily the friends that I had, um, they didn't really say much about it, but I had my own bullies too. I used to think growing up, and I think I mentioned this on one of the live streams that we had, with like some of the ambassadors, but I had mentioned that growing up, I used to think that, from principal to teacher to students who were nice, I used to think that there was a little slip of paper that was passed around with my picture, and it was like, this girl has birthmarks, so like, don't say anything about it. And I was convinced that people, like, I thought substitutes ahead of time got like a little sub note from my teacher that was like, oh yeah, by the way, she has a birthmark. That's what it is. Like, look it up. This is what it means, because, I felt like I was protected by like this little community of like teachers and people who were my friends and stuff like that. But they were like genuinely nice people, and they just didn't see it. And I feel like that is a huge thing with my friends, is they just don't notice it anymore, because it's just such a normal thing now. And I want that to be the case in everyone's situation.
Exactly. Like your difference doesn't define you. And I know we talk a lot about it's really developed who we are as people. But that's true. But it doesn't define us either. And
Mm-hmm.
growing up, I've interacted with a lot of people that say I used to get in front of the whole class and tell them about my birthmark, and that way they're educated and know about it and don't ask questions every day, right? That wasn't my case at all. But it's like you saying, did they have a warning? But no, they were just like accepting of you, and like the world needs more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like our community is making huge strides as far as that goes, because I know my life changed immensely when I became, an official part of the community. But I feel like, the fact that someone reached out to me, like a parent reached out to me, is just such a crazy thing, because, I've like never, been asked about that kind of thing before. And I was never given the opportunity to be like, yeah, I'm an ambassador. Here's the website. Here's like 3 important people who you should reach out to. I think I actually mentioned you, and I mentioned Scott, and I mentioned like the ambassadors page and like the birthmarks page. But it's such an overwhelming feeling of like, this is going to be a normal thing, and people are going to reach out to me and ask questions about it. And that's who I am now. I'm an ambassador for the birthmarks community. And that's just such an amazing feeling that I'm, you know, a part of that.
And you're just like continuing to connect with so many different people, and it's crazy how much there is a need. A lot of these moms who have babies with birthmarks, like they're looking at us like, they can ask the doctors all these things, but as far as like our story and resources like that, I mean, they're searching for the support, and they're searching for answers. And it's like I said, as I get older, I wonder, I can't imagine how my mom felt when I was born. And it's like she won't tell me her real feelings, or she really actually didn't have any concerns at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, to be a new mom and have a baby with one of our vascular birthmarks or birthmark at all, like that can be very scary.
Mm-hmm.
So being that that person that they reach out to for support is like the most incredible thing, to be able to give them the knowledge they need to kind of help their kid along the way and be there in the future if they ever need them. Like, it's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. And it like gives another answer to that why question. It's like, this is why. This is why. It's because someone needs me to be that for them, which is just such a great and rewarding thing. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have one more question for you. Um, so what is one piece of advice that you would give someone who is struggling with acceptance in any aspect of their life?
Um, I think the biggest thing is just to remember to always be kind to yourself. I think we can be our biggest critics sometimes, and it's easy for us to feed negative thoughts to ourselves. And it's easy to feel like we're always getting negative thoughts from others if you are born with a difference. But just remembering to give yourself grace. We've talked about uncovering and covering, and there's no perfect way, and everybody's journey of self-acceptance and self-love and like finding peace in their difference is so different. And it's not one size fits all. So just it's hard too to challenge your insecurities, but I feel like a lot of growth comes from that, and like sitting with those uncomfortable feelings, and especially having friends in the community to reach out to you during that time makes it a whole lot easier. But getting to the point where you're realizing that, again, you were created to be you. You're born different, but different is beautiful. So trying to own that difference is the best advice I can give you, because getting to this point for me has been so life changing, and I don't feel so imprisoned by my difference anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, every day is different. I'm still on that journey. Some days are harder than others, but just finally getting to that point of loving yourself, but giving yourself grace along the way is important. So,
Yeah, well, thank you. So as we're signing off, I typically leave everyone with a good note. So like Chelsea was saying, love yourself. It's okay to be different. I mentioned this in one of the motivational Mondays I did with the ambassadors, but perfect and normal are illusions. The definition is different for everyone. So please keep that in mind when you are looking at yourself in the mirror. You're beautiful no matter what. You are made for a reason. You are made the way you are for a reason, and that you have a purpose. And even if you don't know it yet, you will. And I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day or night or whenever you're listening to this. Thank you, Chelsea, for joining me. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.